with people often thinking immediately about logos and websites, but there's a whole lot more that goes into building a strong brand, which we're about to hear all about. So today I'm looking forward to learning more about every aspect that early stage founders and early stage entrepreneurs like yourselves need to consider when thinking about how you want your brand to be perceived in the market. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to extract a few tips, tricks and secrets from Mark and Treve that can help you when it comes to building your personal brand and getting the great results that you deserve in your business. So welcome to Escape the Rat Race Radio, guys. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Good to have you both on the show today. And it was probably a month or two that I popped into your offices in the heart of Soho. Absolutely fantastic location, just before the World Cup was about to kick off. So I hope you guys have been good since then. And we had a really good discussion. And I thought I really would love to have you on the show to share with our listeners some of the early steps that you should be thinking about when building your brand. And you guys have got so much amazing experience that I have no doubt that you're the right guys to have the answers for us today. So Mark, why don't we jump straight in? And I've shared a very brief overview there of just some of the things that you help your clients with, but could you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of background, education and experience, which led to you both setting up the agency?
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. Hello everybody. We got started, as you said, 30 years ago. We worked as is often the case with agency startups, we worked for another agency, and at the time we were less than enamored with how things were going, and reckoned in that sort of youthful way we had in those days that we could have a go ourselves and perhaps do it better. So we broke away. We took those clients with us who wanted to come, quite simply, and that was the link, the launch pad, if you wish, for getting.
Led you into the world of design and branding.
So into this environment, I went to art school, did a foundation course.
Is something that does give you that flexibility to some degree where you're able to work remotely. How have you seen kind of people coming into the industry and how have things changed in that side of things?
Well, I think you've highlighted absolutely the fundamental change. When I first started out, there were lots of bodies everywhere doing things. So you had production people, your printers were huge. They had, manually to create artwork from black and white art remote and still be together.
I think one of the biggest differences I noticed, it was very easy to set up your own business 30 years ago. You didn't have, the kind of investment and expenditure required on IT infrastructure. We just basically walked out, took our artwork bags with us and begged and borrowed a desk somewhere and a landline, and off you went. And actually what we've noticed is much in the last 15 years, the costs of setting up your own agency or your own business, if you're going to go a slightly more traditional model, are just so prohibitive. Most people don't want to take the punt.
Yeah. And would you be referring more to, as you said, having, if you've got offices and premises, the costs
in that traditional sense of how people do things. So I can completely understand why people want to go the other way, because it comes at a much lower cost.
I think the other thing that's worth saying, with all the advances in technology and the ability to work remotely, et cetera, doesn't make you a good designer. It still comes back to the ideas, it still comes back to interpreting the brief, it still comes out with trying to find that nugget of a gem of something special that brings a brand to life. And computers can streamline the process of delivery, but they won't give you the answer. And I think that's worth bearing in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know we're probably going to go into some detail around, what is brand? What does that actually mean? And before we do that, we talk about, having a clear proposition when you're starting out in business. So you've got to be able to articulate what it is that you do and who you do it for. So why don't I challenge you guys and say, what does Turnbull Ripley, how does that stand out from the market? What do you guys do differently and who do you serve?
I think for us, we try and work around, as you've highlighted earlier on at the beginning of the show, this idea of bringing clarity from complexity. So we're very good at taking challenging, complex issues around personality. It might be fit, it might be strategy or approach to something, and actually trying to bring some brand clarity to that, trying to find a pathway through all that noise to arrive at something that is simple, clean, very well thought through, and surprising, if you like. So, we are, if you want a proposition line for us, is on brief, on brand, beyond expectation. So we're not here to do a different brief to the brief you've come to us with. We're not here to recreate your brand if the brief is actually to use the brand elements that you have to create something, but we will do something that will deliver beyond your expectation and challenge you in terms of creativity of what you've asked for. And that's what we do. Okay,
so let's start looking at this. Let's take an example of someone who is maybe still juggling the 9-to-5 job, but they've got a really clear idea about their business and they've already got the wheels in motion. So maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service, but they're at that stage where maybe they've got the first few customers, but they really need to establish some clear brand identity. If I were to come with you in that position, what would be the first steps that you would go through with someone like an aspiring entrepreneur in that position?
Okay. We have, like most agencies, I imagine, a process through which we work. Ours is called brand distillery, and there's 4 elements to that process, which largely take you from the beginning to the output of an identity, a workable identity. The first part of that is the discovery phase, and that really is all about understanding the who, what, why, and how. So, what is the product or service? Why do you think it's unique? Is it unique? What makes you stand out? Do you stand out? So a real honest piece of navel gazing, if you like, to explore the whole world in which the brand is going to live. Is it a Me Too brand? Is it going to be a challenger brand? What's the positioning? How does that fit? Who are the people involved with it? What's their take? How do they fit in? And how does their personality influence or potentially influence the proposition that we're going to try and develop and work around to deliver something creative?
And what I would add to that is we had a meeting a few weeks ago with some entrepreneurs who want to set something up in the sports sector. And it's quite surprising sometimes when people come to see you and they haven't even themselves thought hard enough about those points of difference. And, it's so, we can't even begin to do anything unless you can tell us what it is about you, all those nuggets of information that are going to separate you ultimately from a very crowded marketplace. However original you think your idea might be, there's probably somebody or several people out there doing it already. So, people often haven't, in my experience, thought quite hard enough about that. So we spend a lot of our time asking them difficult questions to make them really think about that.
And one of my mentors and previous guest on Escape the Rat Race Radio, Roger Hamilton, he shared with me that there are 3 brands. And so I'd love to get your comments on this as well. First is your personal brand. So what do you stand for? What are your values? And what do people, what do you stand for, but also what do you stand against? Then you have your company brand. So similar things. What does your company stand for? And is that clearly articulated? And then your product brand. So what can people actually buy? So does that fit into the mix at all with the kind of work that you do with your clients? Do you look at those 3 separate areas and do they come in a certain order?
I'm not sure that we split them out quite in the way that you're suggesting there in distinct elements. But there are crossovers, because I think, again, when you're looking at entrepreneurs, they have a distinct personality, and usually the thing that they're looking to launch or take to market is something in their image. And I think what we look to do is see where that personality blends, because what we can't do, or we would advise not to do, is to tell anything other than the truth, because you'll be found out, and clients and customers won't believe you. So I think you have to be very honest in how you go about doing things. I think you have to be honest in reflecting your personality through the brand or the product or the service that you're going to offer, because you're an integral part of that.
Yeah. So you would say really getting clear on your story. So is that something that you would say to them, really understand what your story is, so that people feel like they're doing business with a person rather than just a logo, shall we say?
I think that's absolutely right. I think that's what they're buying. I think that's what brands are. Your logo is purely a signature on a piece that says it's from you. What people want is that warmth or that feeling of buying a particular product that makes them feel, cutting edge or part of the trendsetters or the latest of whatever it might be. And I think that's the important part of branding for me.
Mm-hmm. And also, in some ways, how it comes through, there is a difference between a B2C brand and a B2B brand. So, for example, if it's something the consumer is going to buy, Absolutely, everything Treve said is critically important. We do a lot of corporate work where an organisation will have a set of values, and it's CSR policies and all the rest of it, and actually it's actually weighing up the relative merits of their values against actually what you're being asked to do for them. Because sometimes, I won't say they're at odds, but sometimes actually for the end business consumer, they're less interested in what those companies' values are as to the price of the product they're actually selling. So there is often a challenge in blending the two, and sometimes you dial one up, and other times you dial the other one up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what are some of the number one mistakes that you often see people when they're developing their brand, that they maybe focus on one area or they don't do certain things? Is there anything that stands out that you see happen regularly?
I think for me, I'd go back to the point I made earlier. It is really surprising the number of conversations you have with people who haven't possibly properly thought through what it is. Why they know why they're doing what they're doing. So they maybe they've had enough of the rat race and they want to do their own thing. I once had a meeting with somebody actually said, I want to come talk to you about setting up my own business. I went, brilliant. And what do you want to talk about? He said, well, the first question is, what do you think I should do? I mean, but it wasn't in terms of brand. It was, what kind of business do you think I should set up? And to which I said, mate, if you can't work that out, I'm really, really going to waste your time. You're going to waste mine. So I think it's actually stopping to think about all those fundamentals. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? What am I hoping to achieve? And what is it about what I'm doing that is going to basically resonate with people and actually allow me to build a business that has longevity. I'm not aware of the absolute statistics, but an awful lot of startups fail in the first year. And I'm not saying I know why they fail in the first year, but not actually having that clarity about what you're doing has got to be one of the key reasons from my experience.
Yeah. And at what stage do you tend to prefer to work with clients? So when they've got some customers and you can actually see some feedback, does that help in the process of putting together the brand and the identity?
I think over the years, we've worked with people at varying different stages. So we've worked with people who have started up out of a back bedroom, with a piece of software that's actually started to gain traction in the market, and they've realized that actually just having a logo and a PowerPoint that they built at home isn't professional enough in the levels that they're going to. So they want to actually look again at where they're going and how they present themselves. And then we've met other folk who've got an idea with no clients as yet, but a clear vision of what they want to do and where they want to go. And they need help in everything from creating a name for the business and then actually driving the brand and the look and feel of it through into marketing, etc., etc.
Mm. So let's just look at some of the areas. When we mentioned at the beginning, people hear the word brand, you think naturally websites, you think logos, you think social media. And those areas are, of course, important now, especially now the online world is, and mobile as well is so important. So are there any other areas that you would suggest, someone starting out in business, they need to have some web presence through their own website. They need to have social media presence. Are there any other areas that you kind of tick off the boxes with them?
I think one of the first questions that we always talk to people about is relevance of the various channels. I mean, with the explosion of digital, what's happened is it's become a bit of a catch-all. So you get people coming to you going, oh, we need this and we need that and we need the other, without first stopping to ask themselves the question, given what I'm trying to create, what I'm trying to sell, what I'm trying to promote, what are the relevant channels where my brand needs to be really effective? And so they start with some preconception, but there's some serious chat that needs to happen first to go, because a brand, in terms of it can function and be present in any environment, on any platform, talking to any audience. And that's why there's so much out there. You can waste an awful lot of time worrying about the wrong channels when you should be focusing on the right channels. Mm.
So guys, you've been nearly 30 years. When is the actual anniversary?
9th of January next year.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm looking forward to that party for sure. Is there one tip that you wish you had, someone had have shared with you back in the early days, which you think would have, really helped in terms of your confidence, your experience of running a business and an agency?
That's a really interesting question. I suppose if I were to wind the clock back, it would have been, because we work for lots of companies in lots of different market sectors. I might have gone down the route of specialization. Mm-hmm. That's possibly one of the biggest questions I've always had down the years is, do you become the brand agency of note for the travel and tourism industry? Do you become the brand agency of note for the property industry? Discuss. There are companies who do that incredibly well. Equally, the way we've approached things, which is, our skill set is applicable to any market in any way. We're somewhat insulated against some of the vagaries of economic cycles. But I think that for me is probably, it's to what extent do you absolutely specialize in a world now which is becoming increasingly niche and increasingly focused.
And what about yourself, Treve? Is there one piece of advice that you look back and think, wow, if someone had told me that a bit earlier, it would have made things a little bit easier?
I'm not so sure. I think because on the design side, you get excited about everything. I think that's the thing, I suppose. So some of the advice would be just to calm down the enthusiasm and think more strategically about things. Not everything has a silver lining in terms of design. Not every project is going to be a great project. And I think because it's a vocation really, rather than a career with design, you get excited about all things and everything. So I think maybe a little bit more grounding would have been a good thing. I remember when at art college, the advice that they gave me was to try and stay in courses as long as you possibly could, because you need all the training you can get and you're going to be a long time working. So, and I think that's very true too.
Yeah. So for people listening right now who are thinking about starting a business, but something's holding them back, they're not quite sure whether they're ready to take the leap. With your experience of kind of having that freedom of being your own bosses and running the agency for as long as you have done, what would be your piece of advice for them listening right now?
I mean, it was undoubtedly for me the best thing I ever did. And I think it clearly depends on the stage of life you're at. I mean, when I started this business up, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have any kids. I've got 4 of them now. I had no mortgage. I was living in rented accommodation. And I actually spoke to my dad about it and I said, what do you think? And he went, well, as far as I can work it out, you've got absolutely nothing to lose. And I think that's the advice I give people is, look at where you're at. And, trust your gut. And if you're not sure about your gut, go and talk to somebody else whose opinion you trust and run the idea by them. Or come and talk to people like us and be interrogated and find out the gaps or things you need to maybe think about a bit more before you actually make that decision.
Fantastic. And from your side, Treve?
I think, well, I'm just thinking of a friend of mine who's just done exactly this, and he's only a young lad, and he's got an idea for an app. So he's literally just left his job to go and pursue the dream of building this app, which he thinks has got real traction and real possibilities in the marketplace. So he's done everything. He's left his job. He's got a vintage car which he's selling to raise capital to get this thing off the ground. And his view is, if I don't do it now, I won't do it later, because the commitment is easier now because I don't have anything else I don't effectively have anything to lose. And I think so there's a great opportunity there. I think you get to the other side of life where you kind of get that midlife wobble and you think, actually, there's just got to be a better way of doing something, and that can drive you. And that's a driver of a positive idea plus a little bit of a, can't go on doing this anymore. So I think there's 2 sides to it. I think if you do it because you've thought about it and you think it's a winner, I think it's worth pursuing. If you haven't thought it through, then clearly there's every chance that you will just make a mess of it.
I think also, and
you know that yourself. Yeah. Sorry, Mark. I think you know that instinctively inside. I come back to this whole idea of the truth. We're not in this business to brand a lie. We're in this business of branding you beautifully to tell the truth in a way that's credible, exciting, ambitious, positive, future focused.
In Treve and our relationship, I sit firmly on the sort of the practical, pragmatic, money. That I ask all those sorts of boring questions in meetings where he gets to talk about all the exciting stuff. And I think, again, a lot of it comes back to ask yourself honestly. You know what you need to live on. How much are you prepared to gamble? How much do you believe in what you're trying to do, and how much are you prepared to take that gamble? Because it is a gamble. But not to lose sight of the fact that ultimately, whatever the idea is, you need to be able to monetize it.
Yeah, very.
Assure yourself that you can monetize it, because if you leave that question wide open, you know, and you're leaving a perfectly well-paid job with all the fringe benefits, you could be heading for a really unpleasant awakening.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, certainly at Escape the Rat Race, we encourage people who do have that burning desire to go and do something that they've wanted to do for so long, because they often say, don't they, when you're on your deathbed, you look back and it's not the things you've done, it's the things you haven't done that you regret. So having that idea, but never just seeing if it was possible is something you don't want to look back on in years to come. And ponder on the thought of what if.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And how do you guys, I think another important thing I've realized over the last sort of 3 years of running Escape the Rat Race is that, you know, it can be quite a roller coaster ride as a new entrepreneur, early stage, and especially when you're the only kind of founder in the company. Do you think that having the partnership has added a dynamic, has helped you guys push through some of those barriers over the last 30 years?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this without Mark, because as he's alluded to, as a designer, your number one skill is not necessarily financial acumen. So I think there's a whole business process that runs through this. You know, we're here to make money as much as we are to do great design work, and what Mark brings to the party is that ability to make sure that we're profitable at the end of the year. And my job is to make sure that the work we deliver is of the highest quality.
Yeah.
I would also add to that. I think it's an incredibly lonely place if you're starting out on your own, truly on your own. And I have to put my hand up here and say I was never ever truly on my own, because I had a partner. And we do, we spend a lot of time talking to clients. People. Often it's people we know who've broken away from their own companies, or they've, like you've described with your projects. They've had enough. They want to go their own way. And actually, we're a sounding board. And so actually, they'll come in and they'll talk to us about, they'll share their challenges and they'll share their concerns, because perhaps they can't share it with their other half because they don't want to scare them. Or perhaps genuinely we can help them sort of either calm down about something or get more excited about something, or yes, you're right to be scared about that, but you're not right to be scared about that, and it's massively helpful to have sounding boards, in my experience. And then it's certainly sustained us for 30 years, the ability to actually go, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And for anyone, if you are out there on your own starting a business, and just like you said, Mark, sometimes it's difficult actually to speak to those close to you, because they might not share that vision. They might be more risk averse and, trying to protect you, but also, trying to pull back and stop you from pursuing those dreams. So that's why it's important to connect with other like-minded people and come along to Escape the Rat Race meetups or other networking events that are held out there, and be around those other positive minds that can nudge you and keep you accountable along the way. Yeah. So is there anything, guys, that I haven't asked you today about creating clarity around your brand that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think we've had an interesting talk around it. As I say, I think the classic who, what, where, why, and how questions are the fundamentals. Who are you? What is it that you do? Why would I be interested in engaging with you? And how are you going to actually, having engaged, how are you actually going to deliver? And I think they're the fundamental questions. That honesty, the honest approach, and the answer to those things will start to help us to formulate that brand story, which we can then turn into something that we can hold up as a benchmark for everything that we do. So, you've got a dynamic product that you want to launch into a youth market. You build a proposition around that that's reflective of your personality and the market that you're going into. What does that look like? And then all the creative elements that we put together are held up against it. So does that actually reflect this? Is this true to what we've said it is going to be? Is it surprising? Is it challenging you in some way? Where are we at in that process? And that's the thing for me, is that honest initial discovery phase. It's cards on the table. Let's talk honestly about where we are and what we need to achieve.
And I think also it's often overlooked. I mean, we do this with small organisations and large organisations. Is have a bloody good look at who's in the market you're now hoping to enter. Who are they? What do they call themselves? They'll all have websites and brand presences. What are their vision and values? How do they articulate what they do? I mean, unless you've come up with that absolutely unique idea that has never been seen or heard of before, there are people out there doing what you want to do, but you want to do it in a slightly different or a slightly better or whatever way, cheaper, whatever it might be way. And the number of people who don't understand the landscape into which they're about to launch themselves, again, is somewhat surprising. And we do a lot of work just looking at markets for people going, this is the visual language, and this is the, this is the tone of voice your market uses, this is the imagery your market uses, this is how they talk to their customers, because you need to understand, do you want to fit right into that, or do you want to stand above it? Do you want to ignore what the custom dictates and go in the opposite direction, which is brave, but you can't go in the opposite direction if you understand what the existing direction is. And I think, again, too many people don't know that.
Yeah. So I think, from the conversation we've had today, it's been so clear that this is really critical stuff that you need to be thinking about. And it's not about what color shall my logo be. There's a whole lot more that comes before that. And to work with professionals, work with experienced people like yourselves who understand the whole concept. And when you really get your client, then, as you said, the whole branding kind of falls into place around that. So guys, if people do want to get in touch and maybe have a chat with you about your services and how you can help them with forming that clarity and that identity, what's one of the best ways of them getting in touch and maybe following some of the creatives that you put out there online?
Yeah, well, we've obviously got a website, we've obviously got a presence on LinkedIn. Just track us down, come talk to us. No one got killed by having a conversation, as my old man used to say to me, and it's true to this day as it is then.
turnbullripley.co.uk.
Yeah.
All the information you need on there to get in touch with Mark or I. Give us a call, come in for a chat. As I say, we're in Edinburgh and we're in Soho. So two great parts of the world to come and have a chat and a cup of tea.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure that I share, of course, all of those links within the show notes for today as well. So guys, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Have learned a lot from this today. And I wish you all the best for the future, for the next 30 years. And
that's wishful thinking, Chris.
And I'll look forward to catching up with you both again soon.
Okay. Cheers, Christian.
Cheers, mate.
Nice to talk to you.
Bye.